So the latest episode of Atlanta had me realizing I've gone to school many a times with an Aaron. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. Sister Fox and I Refuse podcast. I'm back again. This will probably be my final video before I go dark for a while. I was going to do this video yesterday, but it was Friday. I had to get out, get my party on. So I watched the latest episode of Atlanta, right? Poor Wigga, rich Wigga. So, a couple minutes in, I realized that it's raising the question, how do you measure blackness, being black, whether culturally or socially, like what defines that? As the episode starts, they pan onto certain things on Aaron's wall. The Logan Paul shirt, which was hilarious. Logan Paul tour, Post Malone. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, this kid's gonna be white that appropriates or skates culturally or musically or aesthetically into black culture, things that we create, things that we inspire, things that are essentially ripped off from us and then, packaged into white packages. So the episode shot in black and white, which I find both ironic and coincidental, given that I think we're not supposed to make a conclusion visually off of what and who Aaron is. So, he's sitting there playing a video game, and it sounds like he was playing like Metal Gear Solid or one of those Xbox games where, they do it in campaigns and they do it over the web with other people. And he has the headset on and it's usual gamer talk. And in the game, him and the two other guys have flamethrowers. And it's assumed that the other two guys are black just from how they sound and what they're saying. And at some point, Aaron blazes them with the flamethrower and they continue to talk shit. At some point, Aaron gets a text message from, I think, his girlfriend at the time saying that she got into something. I'm assuming college at that point, which at that point, Aaron uses the N-word towards the players on the headset. Which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like that particular part was a send up to the situation T-Pain was in when he was also gaming and the other players were using the N-word, the hard R, a couple of times. And T-Pain ended up lighting their asses up in the game. But anyway, Aaron gets out of the game and lays back on the bed and pulls out a laptop with a website open about Arizona State University. And I'm like, okay, I feel like at this point it's giving white boy tease. You know, it's not uncommon for white boys to use the N word, and especially in gaming environments where their face can't be seen and their address is not public. Like, I've been around my niece and I've heard, like, they haven't said the N word or anything, but it was mostly like guys either screaming because she's lighting their asses up, or when I've been on, you know, internet gaming and stuff, people really go in, especially with those shooter games. But anyway, I guess the goal was for Aaron to get into college, right? So physically, Aaron looks white. Aaron has a black father in this episode. Aaron wants to get into Arizona State University. So the next day on the way to school, they're having a conversation in the truck. And there are scenes like this in the episode where it's like, this is very much a black child's experience with their parents. You know, you better hope that you get into school on, or figure it out on your own, because I'm not co-signing or filling out FAFSA forms. I'm not co-signing for any loans. And if if you're still in the house after you graduate, you know you're paying rent. That's always been an expectation, right? Like, either those few things, or, you know, if you're in my house, you're either working or going to school. You're not just laying up in my house, eating up my food, running up my electric, running up my water, not doing anything with yourself. Like those hard things, and borderline kind of toxic. I mean, very toxic, but that it is what it is. So I was like, okay, I kind of see how they're kind of mixing in some of the blackness, so to speak. You know, Aaron does say in the car that he has, I think, somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 saved up. And at which point his black father laughs it off. And I feel like in that little chuckle that he gave, he's like, boy, you know that's not enough. Don't look at me to give you anything more on that. You'll figure it out. At which point Aaron's like, no, tuition at Arizona State University is $50,000 a year. At which his dad really lays out the laugh, like, boy, you got to be kidding me. So they make it to the school, which is named after very historically known as a very racist Confederate colonial soldier general. I think Robert E. Lee, I think the name was. So Aaron gets out the car after, you know, his dad tells him, you know, if you're still in the house after you graduate, you know you're paying rent. You know, Aaron gets to the door of the school and his dad says, with the window rolled down, real loud, son, I love you. Okay, Dad, okay. Black fathers do that a lot, and sometimes black mothers do that. So I'm like, okay, they're starting to ingratiate some black parent, black child dynamic kind of stuff, expectations. And at that point, I'm like, okay, are they poking fun? What's going on? So at some point, Aaron meets up with his girlfriend and some of his friends in the hallway, and then at some point, a voice comes over the PA system saying that there will be a special assembly of some kind in the auditorium. So they all go to the auditorium and they're seated and everything. And, the principal announces the guest speaker. Announces the guest speaker. And, they all do this. So, the moment I heard Slow Down by Loose Ends, I think it's hanging on the string. Sometimes I get hanging on the string and contemplating, confused. I was like, okay, I know it's going to be some shenanigans. And I was kind of right. So as the person comes out, I freeze the TV. And I'm like, is that Kevin Samuels? I almost fell off my fucking bed, but I was like, okay, I know it's gonna be some mess. So Kevin Samuels plays a guy with apparently a lot of money, and I think from that moment, this was going to be like that situation that happened, I think, a year or so ago, where a businessman went to, I think, a college graduation. I was like, I think that's what's about to happen. So, he announces himself, gives his spiel or whatever, and before he leaves, he says he's going to pay or waive the college tuition for everybody. And the whole room goes crazy. Everybody that's black, bitch. So all the white kids got quiet, all the white kids went crazy. I was like, oh, I know this is going to be some mess. Aaron was the most excited at first because that meant he can go to Arizona State University without having to think of any other means. At that point, it didn't insinuate or give the viewer any assumption that Aaron was athletic or Aaron had good, really good grades or anything, or, Aaron's GPA was high. Things that would get you at least somewhat halfway through college. So Aaron was doubly devastated. And it's like, at this point, we're thinking, okay, maybe he is actually black, and it should be easier. I realized that this episode being shot in black and white was kind of a send up to that movie on Netflix that came out, I think, late last year, called Passing, with Tessa Thompson and Ruth Negga, which was good, strange, but really good. I'm still in my feelings that movie and neither of the leads were nominated at the Academy Awards and Golden Globes. But nevertheless, I'm going back. So at some point, the Kevin Samuels character has almost like a delegation or a committee hold hold these auditions for the rest of the student body that have to prove that they're black in order to get money. I was like, okay, this I just feel it in my bones. I feel it in my spirit that like this is going to be even some more mess. But before that, Aaron, his girlfriend at the time, and his friends are outside the auditorium after the little assembly, trying to make sense of what just happened. One of his friends is like, well, I mean, I don't get it. Like, it's not like they need the money. Getting in school as a black person has always been easy. Like, what about us or something like that? And I'm sitting there like, it's, first of all, it's not that easy. And secondly, it's expensive for a lot of people. And I when he said that kind of shit, I was like, for the longest time, non-people of color have benefited greatly. If you want to go all the way back, the boomers have gotten college education relatively cheaply or affordably without, I don't even think fast food was around then. But, we could, for us, we're limited to either doing athletics, or either trying to get really good grades, which, navigating through grade school and middle school and high school, trying to get to that conclusion isn't easy because, a lot of people think that grades define intelligence. Like they're mutually exclusive, and it's like some of us just are not reached. Some of us haven't really tapped into the potential, and there's only so much you can do in a class period. And we don't really have the resources or the support to flourish, some of us. Going off on a tangent, coming back to the episode, they didn't get it, and when they don't get it, the real ignorant stuff comes out, and that's essentially what the conversation was. They're having this conversation as the black kids are celebrating around the school, on the rooftop, on social media, in the cafeteria with their checks and everything. So at some point, Aaron goes back into the school and ends up near the gymnasium. And around him, you have a quartet, an all-white quartet doing like a barbershop, 1950s barbershop version of Shy's If I Ever Fall in Love Again. Bitch, when I tell you I almost slid. I mean, it did kind of bang though. It did kind of bang. But it took me a little while. I was like, wait a minute, that's not Boys to Men. It's not Jodeci. And then, before the camera panned out of the scene, I was like, oh, no, they're not singing Shy. When I tell you Milk Toast and Wonder Bread, I was like, okay, I think I see this. And then, you have, white kids in do-rags, white kids wanting to do the wave check. And then there's Aaron, who at this point you're like, for me, I was like, is he the blackest white kid? With my ignorance and my prejudice, because the thing about cultural appropriation is that it's so easy for them to just kind of cherry pick certain cultural components, and because they got the haircut, and because they got some BET, and because they pick up some Tupac or some Biggie, they're automatically down. But the flip side of that is that they could just as easily disassociate themselves from you once you're in trouble, or once shit goes left. And because on the outside they're white, external parties can are just as readily prepared to support them and recruit others into further expelling you. Catch that tea. But Aaron's having a conversation with the white kid that has the do-rag on, and he's giving him the 411 as to what's going on behind the doors of the gymnasium. So it's basically an audition to prove how black you are so you can get this money. At this point, it's an exercise or a simulation to measure how black you are to certain black cultural knowledge or black awareness, or to measure your blackness to how socially oppressed you are. But it's funny because just as soon as they were having that conversation, the first person to come out of the gymnasium is a black kid who sounds like a white suburban kid, but he's acting black, like black and sassy and somewhat effeminate. Essentially a caricature of what white people assume that black men are. In my experience, I've seen, some white people, especially in my community, who all but tolerate black people, don't really embrace them, probably never had them at their dinner table, more than likely never had them in their home, essentially is safe as long as we're relegated from a distance. Think the best way to connect with a black person is to take on the persona of a black female. It's so weird. It's so weird. So that's what I took away from that. So they called Aaron into the gymnasium. They must have sensed him because we tend to have a 6 or 7 cents. Like, we can sense people. So as Aaron's walking towards the doorway, the black kid with the check, and I'm going off of physical, like, it was a black kid, but it was a white guy inside of him. Stop. As he walks in, the black kid makes a face like, why are you going in there? You know you're gonna fail. That was my thought. So Aaron walks in, and the whole room is dark. At some point, a spotlight is turned on, and behind the spotlight is Kevin Samuels in the middle, and George goddamn Wallace on the left, to the left, our left. And the other guy, I can't think of the actor's name, but I've seen him in some movies before. So it's the three of them on what looks to be a platform of some kind behind a fold-out table. And they're smoking cigars, and they're doing the talk shit kind of thing that we tend to do when we're around other black guys. So they call him to come closer. And, Aaron is standing there in the spotlight, looking white as can be. And they start asking him black culture, socially black type of questions. When I tell you that question, where he was like, what 6 things can you mix with Hennessy? I was like, oh shit. Oh fuck. I don't even know what 6 things. Cause I drink Hennessy straight up. Or I might do like Jack and Coke as a fallback. So he was getting them pretty good, like halfway through his answer. Rum, Coke, and there was something else he said after that. But then he started to name like fruits and shit. And then he said ice was the 6th one. George Wallace, being George Wallace, was like, all right, hold on, motherfucker. Hold on, goddammit. Like, he just making shit up now at this point. But when I tell you I fell out. So, George Wallace, remember this name, has been a comedian for, I want to say, almost 40 years, right? You've seen him in some comedies. You've seen him, if you've been to Vegas the last 10 or 15 years, you've more than likely seen him out there. Because he had a long-standing residency with one of the hotels, I think, until they were not willing. I think I read somewhere that they weren't willing to excuse him for like a family situation. But he had been out there for a great deal of time. Best friends with Jerry Seinfeld, was, I think, either the best man or the officiant of Jerry Seinfeld's wedding to his wife that he has now and has for quite a while. Has a relatively super clean act, unassuming, dresses in the blazers, but when he gets to talking, gets to going, and he gets upset, the shit is hilarious. So look him up. He's been on Def Comedy Jam. I believe he's been on Comic View. I don't think he has any Netflix specials. He should. He should have as many as The Asian Woman, if not more. No tea, no shade. So he's up there with Kevin Samuels, and they're, between the three of them, they're like shooting these rapid fire cultural questions. And, you know, as the scene goes on, you really just get a lot of Aaron's answers. all over the place. He's talking about 227. He's talking about some about you put your foot in, if it's squishy, it's the real deal or something. Like all kinds of stuff. They have him doing, I think, the Running Man, the Roger Rabbit, like all this black cultural shit. I'm in here rolling my ass, like laughing my ass off. So at some point, he has he finishes the interview and goes on about his day. He goes home. At some point, he finds out that he didn't land the interview. He's not going to get the money for college. As he's in the kitchen with his dad, and his dad is saying something to the effect of, one thing about being black is most times you'll never get what you truly feel you deserve. When I tell you the Nuggets in Atlanta, particularly this season, are so on the money. I know that last episode, that piece that Liam Neeson said before he walked out the room, right on the money. And that's how it is. Like, we never or rarely get what we know we deserve. And white people have no obligation to learn or progress on any particular thing. So the scene in the kitchen is very important because we're taking a little deeper into the characteristics of of a black man, what it means, what it really means to be a black man, and it's not something externally; it's something internally. We're insecure. We're short-tempered, and we're angsty. And those three things come out. Well, the insecurity came out earlier in the episode when Aaron was not responding to everything, that he had no control over. The fact that his girlfriend got into college, the idea that he will not get any help or support from his family to get into college, that he's on his own. And here we have it, he's had the audition or the interview, and he didn't get it. And then he's on social media while he's in the kitchen with his dad, while his dad's talking to him. And he notices that under one of his girlfriend's social media posts, there is a comment from this guy, and she's responding to it. Aaron flips, speeds out of the kitchen up to his room, has her on the phone. Who is so-and-so? And why are you talking to him? And what's this all about? That's very common. She was like, I don't know him, never met him, but you responded, but you're talking to him. Which, that back and forth leads her to break up with him over the phone. Which leaves Aaron on the end of the bed looking sad and shit. So the next scene, we see him go into the garage and put together a flamethrower and walk to the school. And when he gets to the school, he's standing outside of the school facing the marquee with the school's new name on it. and it's in neon lighting. I was like, y'all are funny. Also, there is this black guy, this black kid, also who has a flamethrower, and Aaron is able to ascertain that this kid also did not get the money, and he found that peculiar because physically he's a black guy. But again, on that same idea of how we define and measure blackness, just because he looks black, he wasn't considered the American version of black. This kid from Nigeria, and while you're looking at me and I'm looking at you, like, you would think he would be a shoo-in, like, from the motherland, like the source of our lineage. But no. From that conversation, it's safe to assume that although you may look black, if you're not of the culture, or you have never faced adversity or oppression of some kind in your life, you're not black. And I think the exercise of the simulation in this episode was to accomplish two things. I'll mention number two later on. The first of which is that no matter what you look like on the outside, we are basing this off of how black you are. Like, you can be, we're aware that it's possible that you can be a white person on the outside, but culturally, if you're not with it, if you're not with us, you can't be over here. But on the flip side, you can look black on the outside, and also, if you are not culturally aware or you're not knowledgeable, and like a white person, a person that's white on the outside, you don't face the same shit that we do, you can't get in either. So the game is on, right? They get into a little spat. You know, Aaron says a couple of things. The Nigerian kid says a couple of things, and which causes the Nigerian kid to aim his flamethrower at Aaron, and that causes Aaron to start running as the Nigerian kid, pulls the trigger on his flamethrower and there's flames going. So as Aaron's running, the kid is lighting the school sign up, and it's essentially like a capture the flag kind of thing, or like in the game that Aaron was playing earlier in the episode, every man for himself. So, you know, Aaron is being targeted. A white kid's being targeted. And, you know, the Nigerian kid's laughing. Aaron somehow manages to, his extinguisher or whatever, his gun leaks gasoline, and he inadvertently lights his feet on fire, causing him to like run and try to get out of his shoes at the same time. ends up right in the courtyard where he was earlier with the Nigerian kid on the roof with his flamethrower in his hand. And the kid says something and then gets shot in the shoulder by the cops. Falls flat. Aaron has his hands up after he's told to freeze. Let me back up. So, in the earlier part of the episode, when Aaron and his dad, his black father, are in the car on the way to school, there is a news report that blares over the radio saying there was a black teenager shot and killed by police. And there's a little conversational response from Aaron that says something to the effect of, things will be all right. The cops always tell you to freeze. And his dad tries to, I guess, enlighten him as to the difference the differences or little nuances with the cops in situations that involve non-people of color, in situations that involve black people, and how, they could say that, or they couldn't, or they don't have to say that. And the outcome is still the same for black people. So there's that. I want to throw that in there. So, going back to the flamethrower scene, the Nigerian kid gets shot. Aaron gets put in the back of a police cruiser with the door open. Kevin Samuel shows up to the school in his robe and realizes that, part of the school that's in his name, that's named after him, is either on fire or torched. Catches up to the Nigerian kid who's on the stretcher at this point, and he's about to get put into the back of the medic van. And Kevin Samuels is like, you the one that tried to burn down my school? You got shot by the police? Oh, you earned the money. You earned the money. You got a full ride. Getting shot by the police is the blackest thing you can do. And I said, ain't that a bitch? This is where we are in society, where it's police brutality is so popular and such a trend at this point that is the blackest thing. Unequivocally, there's no argument that can be done to a person, whether you're black or white. So with that, we paying your college tuition. It didn't matter that you didn't know what 227 was or give me a break. It didn't matter that you didn't know what 6 things you can mix with Hennessy. It didn't matter whether or not you knew, what to choose between Jada and Janet, Tupac or Biggie. None of that mattered. The fact that you got shot by a police officer trumps all of that. I still shudder when I say that word. So there it is. Aaron went through all that, never successful in getting the money, but I don't know if we conclude that he got charged with anything. I assume something happened because they had to fast forward a year. And, a year later, he's working in a department store. He's cut his hair down to almost to like a Everlast Cypress Hill kind of cut. Very much Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Raps 6 bars or 12 bars. Has the cut, has the one earring, has a couple of slits in the eyebrows, is macking on a black customer, and is sounding like a black guy that's like soaked up a lot of BET. And in that moment I was like, I've gone to school with a white guy that had a similar glow up, whereas like in freshman year of high school, there was this guy, his name was Mark, looked like one of the white kids from Home Improvement. Essentially looked like a skater boy, right? At some point during this high school, he cut his hair off, had like a fade or a Caesar or whatever, was walking different, dressing different, had a car, but it wasn't like an Acura or anything. It was literally like a brown two-tone Bronco type of car, but somehow he was able to like ingratiate himself into hanging out with the black kids, and because he had a car, they would ride with him all the time. And he's married to a black woman, the same girl that he took to, I think it was high school prom. It was senior prom, sorry, it was senior prom. And I was like, that's the same fucking thing. So, he's macking on the black girl, Aaron is in this scene, and he's feeling her, and it looks like she's feeling him. At some point, his ex-girlfriend pops back up, the one that broke up with him. And there's a little conversation. He's like, hold up, finishes his transaction with the black woman. And as she starts to walk away, he's looking her up and down like, a nice white girl. I was like, what in the John B is going on here? So he turns around, doesn't know, has this look on his face like he doesn't know why she's there. And she's trying to like read and take in what she's seeing, because this wasn't the guy that she was in a relationship with in high school. Like he's confident, he's cool, he's not tripping off of anything. Total opposite to the guy that was in high school. And the conversation was kind of weird, real brief. She starts to walk away. He says, hey. She turns around. He says something to the effect of, I still always find you attractive, right? And she smiles. And he looks into the camera, turns his head, and smiles. And the shot freezes. And the loose end song that played earlier is playing. And then it fades to black and the credits roll. I was like, ain't this some shit? Like, it tells me that he is going to dabble in both circles. He's going to strive or aspire to be like a Mac of some kind or a player of some kind, where the white girl is going to fall for this new aesthetic while he continues to hopefully or successfully culturally appropriate himself in black circles. That was my thing. Like, that's the thing that people, some of us who are more aware than others pick up on, is that, like, they can, white people can go into different ethnic cultures and groups and stuff and play and bounce, steal and borrow the things that make us who we are and make us special, and go over here and act like them and do whatever, and with that aesthetic from over here will look cool over here. Isn't that wild? So for me, reviewing the episode, I was like, all right, I had to face the prejudices and the ignorance that I have. Because at first it started to come off like, maybe this is a black kid in whiteface. Maybe this is like a Teddy Perkins kind of thing. Or, as I mentioned on our Twitter page, maybe this is a satire in the vein of, Eddie Murphy's, one of many of his famous SNL skits where he's still Eddie Murphy in the face, but he's essentially a white guy trying to not pass but live and see how it is as a white man. Will he get into less trouble? Will he be bothered less, accosted less? And this is back in the 80s in New York City, where like crack and cocaine was off the rockers. It was well known at that point that New York City cab drivers routinely would avoid picking up people that were black. And that kind of thing was such a problem by the time the 90s came around that like Nightline or Dateline or 2020 did an exercise. And it proved that they, hand over fist, New York City cab drivers would not pick up black people, especially at night. So I went into the episode thinking, okay, is this going to be a white kid that's offensive? Are we going that route? Or is this actually a black kid trying to pass? And I was like, okay, well, what are we supposed to feel like or relate to this guy or, this kid? Because he's going through the same experiences that we go through. And he's having the same kind of dynamic with his black father that we have with our parents as far as college, the future, how the dynamic will change in the house after graduation if we're still in the house. And with that, are we supposed to feel some kind of way for him? But also, like, even as the other white kids around him felt some kind of way from the announcement in the assembly, I wouldn't say he was slow to realize, but he was like he was more on the fence about it. I'm going to say ambivalent about it. it wasn't necessarily a bothersome thing for him, even though at that time there was a clear line between the four of them and the black kids. And he knew, being physically white, that it was going to be harder for him in this environment, and that he was, and with that he was going to have to try a little bit harder. He ascribed on a superficial level to certain certain blackisms. But beyond that, he was still like a suburban white kid. And this is from my perspective. Suburban white kid who, his two closest references, culture-wise, is Post Malone, who a lot of people consider, he's considered hip-hop and rap, but he doesn't come from that life. The life that those of us who have listened to rap and hip hop the last 30 or 40 years, he doesn't come from that environment. The environment that's laced with adversity, the environment that's laced with poverty, the environment that's laced with having to sell drugs out of necessity and living to tell about it. Trying to find the light in a lot of dark. And of course, like having parties and beatboxing and being fun and creative. With Post Malone, no disrespect to Post Malone, I think some of his stuff is good. The thing about it is that, and he's not the only example, but we're just examining the two references that are clear in Aaron's room at the top of the episode. Post Malone represents that very thing that is shown in the episode. That kids that look white can have the swag, can have the voice or the sound of black culture, but appeal to white audiences. Like, he doesn't have the stereotypic aesthetic that comes with actually being black, from the outside. Because there's a lot of negative connotations that come with being black and a lot of limitations placed on you in this world because you're black. And, Post Malone is able to dabble in different genres. He can do the rock thing, do the trip hop thing, and it'd be popular because he's white. And there are some examples of black artists in the vicinity of a Post Malone that are considered rap and hip hop, but they're not. It's not of a classical or traditional sense. And when I say classical or traditional, like a Nas or a Mobb Deep, or even a Jay-Z in his heyday, where, the flow and the wordplay and the storytelling and the structure of the song and the cadence in the song is takes you back to classic hip hop and rap of some kind. Early 90s, late 80s. Like it doesn't, it's not on that linear. It's not on that wavelength, but it's definitely a style that pulls from that, but he kind of expands it and makes it more popular. And suburban white kids run to that. You know, Eminem and, dare I say it, the Beastie Boys, but although the Beastie Boys were able to successfully do both hip hop, rap, and rock, and marry the two, Eminem, rap and hip hop all day. He may have a couple of rock and pop, sensibilities in his music, but best believe fast rapping, turning the words, storytelling, all that kind of stuff. Eminem is the exception, but I would definitely say Eminem kicked down the door and made it more appealing for suburban white kids, for better or for worse. So to see that, I was like, yeah, I see where this is going. Like, it's definitely a cultural appropriation mixed into this episode. And then you have Logan Paul, who, all right. So with Logan Paul, it's oh boy. From my perspective, and this is my opinion, it's not a reflection of anybody else's. Logan Paul is an example of someone that is like is a silly, goofy, like no boundary, no practical, no no comedic awareness. Who, like, at one point he was on the Vine with his brother. There's Logan Paul, and then there's two Pauls, their dad and their mom. They were doing stupid shit on Vine. Some of it was funny, some of it didn't land for me. But at some point, as he started to soar, it just got a little too crazy and got a very tasteless, very disrespectful. A lot of us are aware of when I think he was vlogging. And at this point, Vine had died down already. And I think that was the turning point where it was like, all right, this app is not around anymore. We gotta step it up. We gotta really be over the top. So he did the YouTube thing. And he was, I think, in a Japanese forest somewhere. And, recording, and there was a person that hung themselves. And he actually made that part of his thing. I was like, yeah, this is the part. Not that I was like terribly invested in Logan Paul, but Logan Paul represents how far you can go with little to no repercussions. If anything, there was no rush to cancel Logan Paul. Like, there was some conversation, but Logan Paul continued. And with that, his followers and subscribers went up even more. It only brought more positive attention towards Logan Paul. And then he did the boxing thing and was still of the persona of old Logan Paul and new Logan Paul. And then his brother kind of essentially followed in his footsteps and was doing similar shit where it was like, yeah, I'm bigger than ever, but I'm still going to do stupid shit to get a response. And eat to the point to where you're like pulling the hat off of Floyd Mayweather and playing this got your hat, got your nose kind of game. So Logan Paul is an example, is the not the only, but probably the most popular personification of representation or example to pull from of white people not knowing the line, blurring the difference between reality and perception, and not having to face the same consequences or not expected to have to learn from their shit. I mean, as long as you have blonde hair, blue eyes, and abs, you're good to go. So that's what those two things represent for me from watching that episode. There was some expectation for Aaron to figure things out from a black household, black culture perspective as far as college. Just know that if you're still in my house after you graduate high school, you're paying rent. And more than likely it's going to come out of that money you saved up. But you'll figure it out, you'll figure it out. That's still happening. So, this was a great episode. One of my favorites. I'm going to keep watching it a couple of more times. I know the complaint at this stage of the season is that, people are not feeling the back and forth they do with the episodes between, the episodes that don't feature or, the four main characters or is part of the linear storyline of Paperboy and Earn's celebrity and navigating through the industry and the whole rap thing. And, these standalone episodes where it doesn't feature any of the four people and it's pulling from the difference and the disassociation and the momentary cherry picking that white people do with people of color. I also found it eerie that this episode came out when it did. Kevin Samuels being in the episode and the episode dropping not too long after his passing. I was like, ooh, that's kind of eerie for me. But I'm digging the season. Nothing against the episodes that feature the four main characters, but the other episodes that don't feature them, I think strengthen the season. I know a lot of people go into shows thinking or expecting or wanting a season where they get to follow the main characters, the dynamics of relationships throughout the whole entire show. But mind you, Atlanta, I don't think, gets a full order from FX where, 23, 24 episodes a season. I think they roughly do 10. And I think people are tight that of the little bit of episodes that they get each season, that they're not going to be able to get their full value. But it's like, you're not really losing anything. And it's like, every show doesn't have to follow the same structure and the same format that you're used to. It's definitely, going about it the way that they have is definitely making season 3 a standout. For the longest time, no tea, no shade, season 2 was, and to me is, the best season of Atlanta so far. It doesn't take, in that opinion, doesn't take away from season 1 or season 3, but I think this approach that they did to season 3 keeps the show fresh. I've never seen something like this with any other show. I haven't seen it with like Baskets. I've never seen it with anything like Jordan Peele has done. So, I mean, I take it. And, The Big Payback was a great episode. This episode was great. The Trini episode was really good. The lesbian couple and the adopted kids episode was really good. So I just don't know. Like, here's the thing, even with the episodes that feature some of the main cast, there's still some takeaways that you get from that. And it takes me a couple of days to chew and digest and reevaluate, because I'm like, what the fuck just happened? But all of that just supports the genius that Childish Gambino has. I would be definitely pissed if this show and the leads don't get any nominations and or wins. So with that, I'm going to leave it with a Mr. 5-Star Reviews podcast. I know this review was a little long. I just had to get a lot out. I was thinking that, it wouldn't hurt Childish Gambino to actually do like an Atlanta movie. I wouldn't expect like a movie series where it's like 4 Atlanta movies, but like as minimal or as, minimally involved as the main cast was on the show, I think at this point they're half the season at this point. Like a movie would be pretty good to kind of expand on the Paperboy storyline. But we'll see. We'll see what the future episodes hold. I don't know how many more episodes are left, but I'm loving it still so far. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I will catch you guys later. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you see I Refuse podcasts. Try to keep the YouTube channel going. We got the streaming still happening. I just uploaded an episode this week, Mixed Nuts 4, a mess. I may upload a new one next week while I'm starting recovery from surgery. Your boy's getting brain surgery on Monday. Am I nervous? Yes, but I'm more excited and eager to have it done. And recovery is up to a month. But I'll still be able to stream on the Spotify and the Apple Podcast while I recover. I'll probably do less YouTube during that month, but it's not like you don't have all this other fabulous content thus far. So get into that, by the way. So stay hydrated, stay moisturized, keep your eyes on your own paper, and stay safe and prayed up. Bye.